The studio lights blazed down on the vibrant set of the Tamron Hall show, where the audience buzzed with anticipation for a highly publicized interview with the legendary Samuel L. Jackson. Known for his commanding presence and unapologetic candor, Jackson was there to promote his latest film, a gritty action thriller that had critics raving. Tamron Hall, the poised and charismatic host, welcomed him with her signature warmth, her smile lighting up the stage as she introduced the Hollywood icon. The crowd erupted in applause, chanting his name, eager to hear his thoughts on everything from his career to his outspoken views on social issues. The conversation started smoothly, with Tamron skillfully navigating Jackson's storied filmography, from Pulp Fiction to his Marvel Cinematic Universe role as Nick Fury. She asked about his preparation for intense roles, and Jackson, with his trademark wit, regaled the audience with tales of method acting and his love for challenging scripts. But as the interview shifted to more personal territory, a subtle tension began to simmer. Tamron, known for her bold questions, brought up a recent social media post where Jackson had criticized a political figure, a topic that had sparked heated online debates. The audience leaned in, sensing the shift in tone. Jackson's eyes narrowed slightly, his smile tightening, as he responded with a measured but pointed remark about free speech and the responsibility of public figures to speak truth to power. Tamron pressed further, asking if his outspokenness ever caused friction in his professional life. The question seemed innocent, but it struck a nerve. Jackson leaned forward, his voice dropping to that iconic, commanding timbre, and said, "Look, I say what I say because it's real. If people can't handle it, that's their problem, not mine." The audience murmured, some clapping, others shifting uncomfortably. Tamron, undeterred, pushed back gently, suggesting that his approach might alienate fans. That's when the air in the studio thickened. Jackson's response was sharp, accusing the media of twisting words to create drama. "You're doing it right now," he said, pointing at Tamron, his voice rising. The crowd gasped, and Tamron's smile faltered for a split second before she tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But the spark had been lit, and the interview was teetering on the edge of something explosive. The exchange grew heated as Samuel L. Jackson, never one to back down, doubled down on his stance. His voice, now laced with frustration, filled the studio as he challenged Tamron's framing of his activism. "You wanna talk about alienation? How about the media alienating people by spinning narratives instead of listening?" he said, his words cutting through the room like a blade. Tamron, a seasoned journalist, maintained her composure, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise at the intensity of his response. She countered, calmly but firmly, defending her role as a host to ask tough questions that reflect audience curiosity. "Samuel, I'm just trying to understand your perspective," she said, her tone diplomatic yet probing. The audience was riveted, some nodding in agreement with Jackson, others whispering about the audacity of the confrontation. The show's producers, watching from the control room, exchanged nervous glances as the segment veered off script. Jackson, leaning back in his chair, crossed his arms and scoffed, "Understand? You don't understand a damn thing if you think this is about me explaining myself." The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and gasps, the energy in the room electric. Tamron, sensing the need to regain control, tried to pivot to a lighter topic, asking about his upcoming projects, but Jackson wasn't having it. He waved off the question, his frustration boiling over. "We're not done talking about this," he insisted, his voice booming. "You wanna put me on the spot? Let's talk about how the media picks and chooses who gets a pass and who gets dragged." The accusation hung heavy, and Tamron's expression tightened. She responded with a measured tone, acknowledging his passion but suggesting they keep the conversation constructive. The audience could feel the clash of two strong personalities, each refusing to yield. Backstage, the production team scrambled, debating whether to cut to commercial or let the drama unfold. The director signaled to let it play out, knowing the moment was television gold, even if it risked spiraling out of control. Jackson's intensity was magnetic, his words resonating with those who felt he was speaking truth, while others saw it as an attack on Tamron's professionalism. The confrontation was no longer just about the question, it was a clash of ideals, a battle between unfiltered honesty and polished media presentation, and it was clear neither was backing down. As the tension escalated, the studio audience hung on every word, their reactions fueling the fire. Samuel L. Jackson, now fully in his element, leaned forward, his eyes locked on Tamron as he continued his critique of media practices. "Every time someone like me speaks up, y'all try to box it up, make it a soundbite, make it a problem," he said, his voice a mix of defiance and exasperation. "I'm not here to play nice for your ratings." The crowd roared, some cheering his boldness, others stunned by the directness of his words. Tamron, ever the professional, tried to de-escalate, her voice steady as she acknowledged his perspective. "I hear you, Samuel, and I respect your passion, but let's talk about how we move forward, not just point fingers," she said, attempting to bridge the gap. But Jackson wasn't ready to move on. He shook his head, his frustration palpable, and launched into a broader critique of how public figures are scrutinized for their opinions. "You think I don't know how this game works? You ask me a question, I answer, and tomorrow it's Samuel L. Jackson goes off on every headline." The audience laughed nervously, recognizing the truth in his words but feeling the weight of the moment. Tamron, sensing the interview slipping further out of her control, tried to interject with humor, saying, "Well, you're making it hard for us to write a boring headline today." The quip earned a few laughs, but Jackson's expression remained steely. He leaned back, his voice lowering but no less intense. "You wanna talk real? Let's talk about why certain voices get amplified and others get silenced." The accusation landed like a punch, and Tamron's face showed a flicker of irritation. She responded, "I'm here to amplify voices, Samuel, including yours. But this is a conversation, not a monologue." The crowd murmured, sensing the delicate balance tipping. In the control room, producers were now on edge, with one whispering about cutting to a break. The director, however, saw the raw authenticity of the moment and decided to let it run, knowing it could define the show's reputation for fearless dialogue. The clash was no longer just about Jackson and Tamron, it was a microcosm of larger cultural debates about truth, media, and accountability, playing out live on national television. The confrontation reached a boiling point as Samuel L. Jackson's frustration spilled over into a direct challenge. "You wanna know why I'm heated?" he said, his voice rising again. "Because every time I come on shows like this, it's the same dance. You ask me something to stir the pot, and I'm supposed to smile and play along. I'm done with that." The audience gasped, some clapping in support, others unsure how to react to the raw intensity. Tamron, visibly taken aback but refusing to let the moment derail her, leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "Samuel, this show is about real conversations, not stirring the pot. I asked you a question because your voice matters, and people want to hear it." Her words were sincere, but Jackson shook his head, unconvinced. "Real conversations don't start with gotcha questions," he shot back, his tone cutting. The exchange was now a full-on verbal sparring match, with neither side willing to concede. The audience was split, some cheering Jackson's unfiltered honesty, others feeling he was unfairly targeting Tamron. Backstage, the production team was in chaos, with producers debating whether to intervene. One suggested signaling Tamron to wrap it up, but she was already in the thick of it, refusing to let Jackson dominate the narrative. "I'm not here to trap you," she said, her voice steady but with an edge. "I'm here to have a dialogue, but it takes two to make that work." Jackson smirked, his eyes glinting with defiance. "Dialogue. This feels more like an interrogation." The crowd erupted again, the energy chaotic and electric. At that moment, a producer made the call to cut to commercial, but not before Jackson stood up, his frustration boiling over. "I don't need this," he said, removing his mic and tossing it on the chair. The audience gasped as he walked off the set, leaving Tamron stunned but composed. She quickly recovered, addressing the audience with a smile. "Well, folks, that's live TV for you. We'll be right back after this break." The cameras cut, and the studio buzzed with shock and excitement. Social media was already lighting up, with clips of the confrontation going viral. The incident was a lightning rod, sparking debates about whether Jackson was justified or if Tamron had been unfairly blindsided. As the commercial break ended, Tamron Hall returned to the stage, her professionalism unshaken despite the dramatic exit of Samuel L. Jackson. The audience, still reeling from the confrontation, watched as she addressed the incident with grace. "We just had a passionate moment here, and that's what makes live television so real," she said, her voice steady and warm. Samuel L. Jackson is a legend, and we respect his voice, even when it's raw and unfiltered." The crowd applauded, appreciating her ability to handle the chaos with poise. Behind the scenes, however, the production team was in a frenzy, trying to reach Jackson's team to see if he would return or if the show needed to pivot to a new segment. Social media was ablaze, with hashtags like hashtag Samuel L. Jackson walks off and hashtag Tamron vs. Samuel trending within minutes. Some praised Jackson for standing his ground, calling him a truth teller who refused to be tamed by media narratives. Others criticized him, arguing he was disrespectful to Tamron, who was simply doing her job. Tamron, meanwhile, transitioned to a new topic, introducing a pre-recorded segment to give the crew time to regroup. But the energy in the studio remained electric, with audience members whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Offstage, Jackson was reportedly in a heated discussion with his team, frustrated by what he saw as an ambush. His publicist urged him to return and clarify his stance, but Jackson was adamant, saying, "I said what I needed to say. I'm not going back to play nice." The incident was already being dissected by news outlets, with some framing it as a clash of egos and others as a broader commentary on media dynamics. Tamron's team, meanwhile, was focused on damage control, ensuring the show continued smoothly while addressing the viral moment. By the end of the episode, Tamron closed with a heartfelt message about the importance of open dialogue, even when it's messy. "We don't shy away from tough conversations here," she said, earning a standing ovation. The moment cemented her reputation as a host who could handle anything, but it also left lingering questions about whether Jackson's walk-off was a stand for authenticity or a moment of unchecked temper. In the days that followed, the confrontation between Samuel L. Jackson and Tamron Hall became a cultural flashpoint. News outlets ran endless segments analyzing the exchange, with pundits debating who was in the right. Social media platforms buzzed with hot takes, memes, and edited clips of the moment Jackson tossed his mic and walked off. Some fans hailed him as a hero for refusing to conform to media expectations, with posts like, "Samuel L. Jackson just said what we're all thinking." Others defended Tamron, praising her professionalism and arguing that Jackson's reaction was unfair. "She was just asking a question, why can't he handle it?" One tweet read. The incident sparked broader discussions about the role of media in shaping narratives and the pressures on public figures to censor their opinions. Tamron addressed the controversy on her next episode, acknowledging the intensity of the moment without throwing Jackson under the bus. "Passion is what makes us human," she said, "and I'd rather have a real moment like that than a scripted one." Jackson, meanwhile, remained unapologetic, posting a cryptic message on social media. "Speak your truth, even when they don't want to hear it." His fans rallied around him, while critics accused him of dodging accountability. The fallout also reignited debates about Tamron's interviewing style, with some praising her for tackling tough topics and others questioning whether she pushed too hard. The show's ratings soared, with the episode becoming one of the most watched in its history, proving that controversy sells. Behind the scenes, both teams worked to smooth things over, with reports of a private conversation between Tamron and Jackson's representatives. While no public apology came from either side, the incident left a lasting impact, shaping how future guests approached the show and how Tamron navigated high-stakes interviews. For viewers, it was a reminder of the raw, unpredictable nature of live television, where egos, truths, and tensions collide, leaving everyone to pick up the pieces and decide what it all means.